Today's Reddit stories are all about relationships. Our first one is titled, Am I the a-hole for yelling at my girlfriend to stop effing eating? My sister, who's 23 years old, runs a bakery business, and she's been struggling lately to keep up with orders because she's been short-staffed. She does a lot of orders for wedding cakes that require custard or marmalade fillings, and I offered to help her out by making these fillings at home and bringing them to her so she has less work to do. Unfortunately, the past 4 times I've made these fillings, my girlfriend, who's 24, has literally dipped her fingers into the filling jars and contaminated them because, in her words, she just wanted to try some. I've tried explaining to her that she can't dip her fingers in and contaminate the entire batch because then I have to remake it. I said she should use a spoon and take some out if she wants to try it so bad, but she just pouts and says that she likes using her fingers because it takes her back to her childhood. Today I was trying to finish some chocolate custard to send it over to my sister really fast because she was running late on a wedding cake order for an important client. I told my girlfriend beforehand to not eat the custard, and if she really wanted to please use a spoon. I get out of the shower, and what do I see? She has her fingers in it again. I totally lost it because this is the 5th time she blatantly disregarded what I said, and I yelled at her and told her to stop effing eating the food that I'm making because it's not for her and she's contaminating it. She started crying and got mad at me for fat shaming her, even though I made no comment on her weight and she has no history of weight issues or eating disorders. I know I was harsh, but she kept pushing my limits. Am I the a-hole? Obviously, OP is not the a-hole, but I think mainly because his girlfriend is unbelievably childish and it actually makes zero sense. Like, I don't understand how you get to age 24 where, number one, you don't have basic hygiene, you don't have an understanding of basic hygiene when it comes to food and food handling, so that you wouldn't do this. Number 2, she refuses to listen to him when he asks her to please not do it. Like, especially considering the scenario, right? He's not even just cooking food at home for himself. A lot of people, and I have done videos on this very channel where people have gotten very annoyed at their spouses for just sticking their fingers into their food while they were eating. And that's obviously very, very, very different from sticking your fingers into food that's going to be sold to a client for your sister. Even it's not even your customer, it's actually a customer from your sister's end. So yeah, the girlfriend here is completely in the wrong and a little bit hilarious. And when she says she started crying and got mad at him for fat shaming her, honestly, my gut response was she must be overweight. He claims she has no weight issues, so maybe I'm just being very discriminatory towards fat people. But I just can't imagine any person who would have this kind of really, really terrible response or obsession, like this compulsive need to stick their fingers into food that's not for them. And the fact that her explanation for it is it takes her back to her childhood, like, wow. There's a lot of things that we don't do despite having done them in our childhood. So that's a pretty terrible response too. The next one is titled, I, 32-year-old male, want to break up with my girlfriend, who's a 29-year-old female, because of differences in how we view cosmetic procedures. So my girlfriend and I have been dating for about 4 months. We have been long distance-ish. We live about 4 hours away from each other, and just recently I started noticing or learning about a few things that have really started to rub me the wrong way. The first thing I noticed is within the first 2 months, I thought it was weird that she would always wait until I was in bed before taking off her makeup. But then when I'd wake up every morning, she would look the same. I asked her about this and she said that she would make sure to wake up before me to put her makeup on because she wanted to look her best. I admit I didn't like this, as it seemed like she was too insecure to let me see her without makeup, but I let it slide for the time being. However, I then find out last month that she has regularly been getting lip filler, some kind of injections under her eyes, and injections that get rid of fat under the butt. Sorry, I don't know what this stuff is called. She also told me last year that she got a nose job. I wasn't aware of any of this when we started dating. It only came up because she had an appointment for lip filler and the under eye injections that left bruises on her face. After this appointment, while telling me about these things, she also told me that she was interested in starting Botox and potentially an eyebrow lift and asked what I thought of it. I didn't know what to say other than to give my honest thoughts. I'm honestly not a big fan of cosmetic procedures like this. To me, it seems like you get these things done because you're insecure about your appearance and put a ton of worth into your physical appearance. I'm not going to tell you can't get it done because you should do whatever you want, but if you want my honest opinion, this is it. She insisted she's not insecure about her appearance, but I'm not convinced based on the patterns I've seen so far. To top it all off, she went to get her hair dyed the other day from blonde to auburn, and she absolutely hated it, which is fine, but what got to me was how she reacted. She would not stop commenting on her hair. She cried every night over her hair and refused to wear it down. She didn't even want to leave the house and took a lot of convincing just to go to the grocery store. I've seen pictures of my girlfriend before she had any cosmetic procedures, without makeup, etc., and I think she's beautiful the way she is. I told her this with the caveat that I know she doesn't do those things for me per se, but I hoped she would feel less pressure to do those things. Putting so much value into her appearance both makes me sad that she feels like she has to spend so much time and money on these things, and is also a major turn off. Which leaves me where I am now. I'm honestly so turned off by these recent things that I don't think I want to be with her anymore. I did not realize how much she values her appearance, to the point that she gets unhealthily obsessed if she doesn't look a certain way, and spends so much time and money on cosmetic procedures. I think there's a difference in what we value, but I can't help but feel like a bit of an a-hole, or like I should be more understanding. What says you, Reddit? Now, I actually think this one is quite simple and quite clear. Yes, there is a difference in values, and that's enough of a reason to break up with someone. It's actually much, much worse if you stay with someone for a long period of time and you know from the beginning that your values aren't actually aligning. And then, you know, your relationship will most likely end, or you'll have a very, very long, miserable relationship together. So I think it's very clear that OP should break up with her. That said, yes, there is an argument to be made here that his girlfriend, you know, she's a grown adult woman. She can make whatever decisions she wants. If she wants to have a lot of cosmetic surgery, or plastic surgery and other cosmetic procedures done, then that's her choice. That's her freedom. She can do whatever she wants. This is all good and well. There's an argument to be made here that the girlfriend has full freedom to do whatever she wants. And actually, it's kind of cool that OP does accept that as well. She's a grown adult woman. She can make whatever decisions she wants. She can do whatever plastic surgery she likes. She can have whatever cosmetic procedures she wants. Whatever makes it feel better is, it's, you know, it's her business and it's her choice. All good and well, but I think it's fair enough to actually say she's probably extremely insecure. And honestly, if I were in the situation where someone does not want to be around their boyfriend without makeup, then that's probably a sign that that's not going to be a healthy relationship in the long run. That sounds to me like a huge, huge red flag. So if I were OP, that would have already been my sign of like, okay, there's something not quite right with this person. I think people who rely on makeup to mask their appearance to the extent that they feel like a different person with it on, that's pretty scary. I wouldn't want to touch that. I also find it in like a little bit amusing is she's not insecure about her appearance. Fair enough if she doesn't think that she is, but obviously she's very attached to doing these things. And if she's attached to doing them and cannot imagine not doing them anymore, then that says to me that she does kind of hate how she looks naturally. And obviously one of the really, really bad things and most insidious things about plastic surgery and other cosmetic procedures is it is very much a slippery slope. So you start off with little stuff. You're like, yeah, you know, my nose is just a little bit too big. Let me have a nose job and it's going to look a lot better. And then people just don't stop. And a lot of people will say, oh, it doesn't matter. Again, it's her freedom. She can do whatever she wants. But yes, it does get more and more and more and more unnatural as you go on. So from a general, like, would you advise women to do this kind of thing? I think the women who really go down this rabbit hole suffer a lot and are trying to make up for a lack of confidence by changing their appearance in ways that are unnatural and unhealthy. And you can see the very, very end of that lies in a face that looks a little bit like Madonna's, which, you know, went viral a couple of weeks ago for a good reason. Because when you're making just tiny little gradual changes, it does not occur to you just how unnatural your whole face is looking over time, and then you can't undo it. You know, you can't go backwards in time, so you just keep trying to fix it, and you try to fix it, and you try to fix it, and it looks terrible. So if I were OP, I would get the hell out. I would not be very close to this. I know it's unfair, and maybe if she gets enough like affection and so on, that eventually her confidence and security will be at a different place. But honestly, I think that this is something that would require her to realize that she is insecure and that she's trying to find a way to fix herself in a way that's not good and not healthy. It reminds me a lot of women who are very, very dedicated to saying that they're a 10 when they're clearly not a 10. And everyone around them knows that they're not a 10, and they themselves know if they were being honest, they're not a 10, but they're like, this is just confidence. And if your confidence comes from lying to yourself or from trying very hard to change your appearance, then you're not actually confident and you're not secure with who you are. So I wouldn't be anywhere near this. Now you can see one of the funnier comments here. One person says, considering how she reacted to her hair, just wait until one of her cosmetic surgeries gets botched. And I'm like, oh, ouch, that would really, really suck. And the next one, which I think is hilariously wrong on every level, says, getting cosmetic procedures doesn't mean she's insecure to start with, and you don't get to decide if she's an insecure person for caring about her appearance. She does. Someone who doesn't want to be insecure would respond very poorly to being called insecure. That's probably the worst way to help her. It could be that she likes her natural body and or face, but having a little work done makes her feel even more confident. It clearly doesn't matter because you didn't even know that she had surgery done until she told you. It's also totally normal to cry over a bad haircut. Hair is a big part of our identity, so having it turn out badly or even just not as you wanted it can be really hard to take. Hair also grows pretty slowly, so it would be a while before she could get it fixed. Regardless, you clearly aren't compatible, so just do her a favor and break up with her. Now, there is something about the defensiveness of this comment that makes me question if this is a person who's also had a bit of plastic surgery done. The statement, it could be that she likes her natural body and or face, but having a little work done makes her feel even more confident, which I'm sorry, that means that your original state of confidence is not that high. Like if the thing that makes you feel more confident is that you look different, then I think that that's a problem. You can see one person replied to her who said, as a woman who started to do cosmetic procedures whenever her self-esteem was at an all-time low, I disagree. Doing a thing here and there seldomly is fine, but what OP is describing for me is indeed a very obvious insecurity too. So yes, no, I think sometimes actually it's really good to call out insecure people. I think if you know people like this and you care about them, it's worth being honest with them, because sometimes people end up in their heads and they don't quite see how they're spiraling from the outside, and getting a bit of a reality check from someone else is a good thing. So if I were OP, I would break up with her. Am I the a-hole for not giving my girlfriend money for nothing? This whole story has been a drawn-out event and it needs some context. So I, 31 years old and male, have been working in the business sector for a little over 7 years. It's been paying very well as my field, MIS logistics, has been growing steadily for a while now. I've been very particular about my finances ever since I was a teenager. I've always made sure to save and invest intelligently. A little over a year ago, I met my girlfriend. We'll call her Sarah. Now, Sarah, a 29-year-old female, is an incredible person. She's been supportive and kind and loving throughout our entire relationship, and I've tried my hardest to return that same energy. But she had a really large issue come up in her field last month. She works in physical therapy, and her company laid her off. She hasn't been smart with her money at all. I've tried to tell her to invest, but she still only puts away about 10% of her income, and she made a big investment in herself last year, moving into the city, so her financial situation isn't great. She only has a couple thousand saved up, and she had to move out of her apartment when she got laid off due to its ridiculous rent, $1,500 a month. She asked me if she could move in for a bit to get back on her feet, and I begrudgingly obliged. My apartment isn't massive, and it's way more expensive getting food for two every night. Now it's been over 2 weeks, and she still doesn't have a job. She's had a couple of interviews, but they've fallen through. I asked her about when she thinks she'll get another job, and she says it'll probably take a bit. I feel like she's taking advantage of me. To top it all off, she asked yesterday if she could borrow $100 to pay off her credit card bills from earlier in the month. I told her that I'm done giving her money for free and that she needs to get a job soon because it's costing me so much keeping her in and feeding her. She started crying and said that she couldn't believe how I was acting after how long we've been together. My friends think I'm being too harsh on her. Am I the a-hole? I know $100 isn't that much money, but it's the principle of asking me to pay off her own payments that irks me. She made those purchases. She should be responsible for them. Me and her talked again, and she couldn't believe how I treated her. I tried again to explain myself, but she just stormed off and said that we're done. I don't get how she could do this to me after everything we've gone through. Now, I think that you could maybe somewhat make the argument that, you know what, again, she's a grown adult woman. She'll be able to look after herself. She's 29 years old. Her financial situation is her responsibility. If she wasn't seeing anyone, it would be completely on her to fix it, blah, 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 blah. Fair enough. I think he also says somewhere that she does have some savings. So maybe she has some emergency funds that she would be able to pull from. Fair enough. All that said, I think that OP is the a-hole. And I think that he's the a-hole fundamentally because he doesn't actually care about her. He says that she has been supportive and kind and loving throughout the entire relationship. And he says, I've tried my hardest to return the same energy. Now, clearly he's not returning that energy at all. It would never occur to me to expect someone who just got laid off to have a job replaced within 2 weeks. Like 2 weeks is not a reasonable amount of time. That's not the amount of time that it should take for you to be annoyed and pissed off about how long she's been staying with you for. That's way too short. Now, if she wasn't looking for a job, or if she'd been there for months and it's not working out, then I would understand you need to sit down and have a conversation and be like, okay, yeah, look, I know you only got laid off last week, but you should restart looking for a job as soon as possible so that we have a better situation financially speaking. That's all fine. Otherwise, he's just unreasonable. He's clearly not in the relationship. Like, he does not value this relationship. He does not value her as a person. The idea of him complaining about how much her food costs. Like, I know feeding another adult person costs a fair bit of money, but if he's been saving and investing intelligently ever since he was a teenager, then feeding another person for a month should not be the thing that breaks his bank account. Like, it's completely unreasonable. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, OP totally has the right to refuse to give her money for any reason that he doesn't want to give her money. It's his money, fair enough. But he is the a-hole because he clearly doesn't value the relationship with her. He was completely out of line in how he talked to her and how he responded to her. She asked if she could borrow $100. Like, she didn't even say, can you give me $100? She's borrowing money. And in theory, if you're actually committed to each other and you actually like her and you care about her, you would not think, yeah, I'm going to kick her out and have her live on the streets or whatever if she's desperate, because just having her stay with me is just so much hassle and so much effort. So I think that is the part that makes OP the a-hole. Now, one person here argues against that. They take two quotes from the post. She only has a couple thousand saved up. And to top it all off, she asked yesterday if she could borrow $100 to pay off her credit card bills from earlier in the month. And then they comment, I'll take the downvotes on this one, not the a-hole. She's saving thousands a month moving in with you. It seems like she's not paying for her own food or contributing monetarily with anything, which I would be sympathetic to if she wasn't keeping her savings tucked away, savings that are meant to be used in an emergency situation like losing her job. You guys have been together only about a year. You didn't live together before this, and it isn't even planned to be a permanent thing. Your relationship isn't serious enough to be obligated to finance a whole other person. And yeah, this is true. I think that this is one of those circumstances that can really make or break your relationship. So if it turns out that she needs help and then you move in together and you really help her out, it could make you so much closer and give you a much deeper bond than what you had before. Alternatively, if you respond to it in this way, the way that OP is responding, then it makes it clear that your relationship is not good and is not going to last. So if I were her, I would probably break up with him as soon as I got a job. And if I were OP, I would probably also say this is a very clear sign that I'm not actually in this relationship and I don't actually care about her. Next one, it feels like he's her husband instead of mine. Background: I, 24-year-old female, have been with my partner, 23-year-old male, for a few years now. We live together in an apartment we got together and have been in for over a year. It's almost a 30-minute drive to get to his mother's house. He works 7 a.m. to 5:40 p.m. almost every single day. I work a night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. His mother does, in fact, have a husband. He's just never around or too busy sitting on his phone. My mother-in-law hasn't learned a word of English despite being in the country for nearly 30 years now. She has other children, an older son who has a wife and kids, so they have a life and she doesn't want to bother them, according to her, and a younger son who's 12 but acts around 6, because they refuse to let him grow up because that's God's plan. Poor dude hasn't gotten new clothes in a while, and the new stuff he does get is kiddie and not exactly age appropriate, so he's never learned how to translate, despite my partner doing it for his mother at a much younger age. And honestly, it's not even translating that's the problem. It's laziness and stupidity. But anyway, this has been going on forever now. As we get closer to me and my partner being ready to settle into a permanent home and have a family, it's getting more and more concerning that he won't put his foot down. His parents need him for everything. I'm shocked they don't call him to drive over and wipe their butts for them. But his mother is the worst. She's older and going blind because when my partner moved out for a few years in his late teens, she just didn't go to the doctor to get her glaucoma medicine because she refused to find anyone to translate. And she feels entitled to his time. I tried explaining that her freaking out on him anytime he says no is not okay, that her shaming him and telling him he doesn't love her and to not come to her funeral is abuse, but to no avail. Today, she had an appointment in the middle of the afternoon on the one day off my partner got. So there goes anything I wanted to do. There's no time to go shopping or anything. And to top it off, we asked her to dog sit for a day or two and she said no. So I don't understand my partner's blind loyalty to these people who only use him. Now, I am very sympathetic to all the women who struggle and suffer through their husbands still being very, very stuck under their mother's thumbs, who can't say no to them, who have their mothers involved in everything that they do, call her up on like a daily basis and will run over her every time she needs something. I completely understand that that's a terrible dynamic for a marriage and that can really sour the relationship between husband and wife. Obviously, I think they are married actually. So yeah, that I completely am sympathetic from that side of things. All that said, there is something here about the way that she describes this and the particular things that she picks up on that kind of just doesn't sit right with me. So number one, she says that the mother is older and going blind. Now, if my mother is old and going blind, I would also run over and help her out to get to appointments. She also says she blames the mother-in-law for this, which I kind of understand. Yes, of course, she's an adult woman. She's responsible for her own health, but it's not unreasonable for an old elderly woman who's going blind to want to rely on her sons to take her to the doctors when she's struggling. And that doesn't seem so out there for me. I understand, again, OP is very annoyed at her for not learning English and so on. And I get that. I would say that there's probably very, very different values there in terms of what keeps the mother-in-law going and what keeps her going. But it seems to me that if the husband here or if his brother were not interested, or her husband, because she does also have one, that none of them were interested in helping her out when she was going blind seems a little bit cruel to me. I would guess that most people would only do this if the relationship between them and their mother is already just completely done and in the dump, and that's why that happens, but that seems dodgy. I think that she holds her saying, I don't want to dog sit against her is also a little bit strange. I think it's pretty reasonable to say, again, if you're old and elderly and going blind, pretty reasonable to go, nah, I don't really feel comfortable dog sitting. And I don't think that you are entitled to have someone else, even someone in the family, dog sit your dogs for you. So again, it seems to me like OP, the specific things that OP is picking up on that she's annoyed by are a little bit unreasonable and a little bit strange. Now, what does sound dodgy is when she says that that the mother-in-law freaks out at her husband every time he says no to her, and she shames him and guilt trips him and tells him that he doesn't love her if he tries not to do anything for her. That does sound a little bit emotionally abusive at the very least. I would be curious to know what is the context of those types of things. But fundamentally, I don't think that you could sit down and tell someone that they are being abused by their parents. And I don't know what type of culture these people come from, but obviously different cultures have totally different relationships with the whole matriarch kind of figures in their lives, and what it means to be respectful to your parents and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so very often I think what happens is that people push on their own cultural expectations on other people, and they're like, I don't understand why he's letting her get away with this. Now, I'm saying this, I do not think it's acceptable for older people to abuse their kids just because they're the parents and so on. And the culture says that you have to respect your parents no matter what they do to you. I would be an insane hypocrite if I really believed that. But like I said, there's a lot of little hints in this post that I just have this feeling that OP is not being super honest. Now, some people here will say, you may not understand his loyalty to them, but it sounds like you need to accept it. You can't tell him how to feel about it, even if he is being abused, even if it is hard on him, even if it will end up ruining your relationship. You can't decide for him how to feel. And just telling him that things won't make him realize, believe, or feel the same way. with his actions, he's showing you the life he intends on having. The fact that his words confirm it further should be concrete for you. If you aren't actually married yet, do yourself a favor and put that off until you decide that if this is the life you want to lead. You may be able to battle him into submission. He's been trained to respond well to that behavior. Will you get a healthy relationship out of it? Will you have the partner that you need by fighting him into sometimes being the partner you want? Those are the questions you need to really sit with. Now, I like this comment just because it kind of calls her out on this idea of you can't force him to agree with you. If he is loyal to his mother for whatever reason and he wants to kind of continue doing that, then you have to accept that. And then the question is, how does that impact your relationship? What are your needs from your relationship and how can you talk about that? I really hate the line, you may be able to battle him into submission. I think this is one of those perceptions that people have where you're like, I mean, I guess this is fundamentally why the dynamic can be so harmful for a husband-wife when the husband is still so closely attached to his mother. Because then the feeling is that the husband has not actually become his own kind of person. He's very much still following the mother's orders. And as long as that dynamic is there, the feeling is always that he's kind of submissive. And most women will have a really hard time respecting a man like that. So fair enough, OP, if this is the problem that you are experiencing and that's what where the struggle is coming from, then I think you should really sit down. And I wouldn't talk to your husband on the level of, yeah, she's abusing you, you shouldn't do what she wants you to do, you should set boundaries along the lines that I want, but you should say, these are the things that are important to me. I want us to be able to spend time together. I want us to be able to make plans together. And I want us to be able to do that even if your parents need things from you. How often do his parents need things from him? And so on and so forth. So I think trying to figure out what types of boundaries are okay with both of you and just to take yourself out of the whole dynamic of their relationship is the easiest way to move forward. And the final one, would breaking up with my long-term boyfriend be a mistake because I want to be alone? We have a 3-year-old and bought a home together. We've had many ups and downs over 5 years, and I'm struggling to let go of all the resentment from the bad times. He's heavily hinting that he's about to buy an engagement ring, in which I told him I'm not prepared to marry him with how things are. I need a parent, not another child. After a night-long discussion, he realized his mistakes, doesn't want to lose his family, etc., but I feel it's too late. He's really making an effort, helping around the house, being a good father and a supportive partner, but I'm checked out. In my head, I was ready to end things, but we wanted to give it another go for our daughter and for each other. After all of this, I still want to be alone. I just can't see a future with him or with anyone. I fantasize about living alone with my little girl every day. My partner went on holiday after saying he can't afford to go on holiday with me, but went with his friends. And I loved it. My house stayed tidy. I felt more relaxed. I was calmer. I slept better. I'm filled with guilt for feeling this way. I can see he's really trying. In fact, he seems happier. I just don't know if I can be vulnerable with him or anyone again. We have a whole life built together and I'm ready to throw it away to be alone. Do you think these thoughts are logical? Do I need therapy for myself? I don't know anymore. I just know I'm unhappy. Now, if I were to answer this very seriously, from OP's side, I think, yes, she should probably get some therapy. She does seem pretty depressed. This idea of, hey, I'm really unhappy and I'm really stuck in this mental thought and I'm really desperate. Like, I just sit there and fantasize about living alone with my little girl every day. That sounds like extremely unhealthy behavior. That doesn't sound normal. And I would assume that there's some kind of just resentment and depression that she's really stuck in and that she can't move past. And I think fair enough, if this happens to you, then you should work on that. What I really hate about the thread and about the framing and about her attitude towards this is it feels to me like she's so stuck in her head that she doesn't have room or space to consider her 3-year-old daughter and her 3-year-old daughter's needs. And if you are like, obviously, being in a relationship that is making you unhappy is not good for anyone. So the question is always, what do you do to move out of that situation? Is there a way that you can work on the relationship so that it does make you happy in future? Or is it the case that you're just checked out of the relationship, there's no saving it, and then you need to move on, you end the relationship and you move on with your life? Now, being stuck in this in-between where you have like one foot in and one foot out is extremely damaging to pretty much everyone in that situation. It's horrible for you because you're always going to be unhappy and think, what if? It's horrible for the boyfriend who is trying to make the relationship work. And obviously the more effort that he goes into it and the more you retreat, then the more annoying and difficult and frustrating and damaging that's going to be. And then it's really, really, really bad for the 3-year-old who can feel and sense and knows that there's something off in the house. She will totally have, like, kids have an amazing sense for this. She will know that there's something going on between both parents that's just not quite right. And that's just not a great household. That's not a great environment to live in. So for as long as you're trying to be in the middle, you're just making things worse for everyone. And so the question is, you need to somehow get enough space and enough context and enough, like, say, self-reflection that you can make a decision for yourself. Am I in this relationship? Will I really try to make it work? And if you really try to make it work, then you will actually do that. Or am I out? And if I'm out, then that means I break up and I move out and we figure out parenting together in a different way. So I think you need to decide that. What I do fundamentally believe is that it sounds to me like breaking up right now would be a mistake. Now, I say this because I think people break up so easily, and I think it's especially damaging and harmful when you have kids involved. If there is something that you can do to try and salvage the relationship and save it, like if it is just a case that you're depressed and you need to work on yourself and you need to try and understand where that feeling is coming from and how you can feel better and how you can improve your life, then you should do that and then see what's going on the relationship side of things. Having this assumption that breaking up is going to be the thing that fixes your problems, I think is a really, really big problem. And if what you're doing is, hey, she can't see a future with him or with anyone, I can guarantee that for probably 99% of people who have that thought, yeah, I just want to be alone forever, that's not going to last very long. She's only 27 at this point, so she's still pretty young. She still has a long way ahead of her. And maybe she'll have like a year or 2 years or 5 years where she's like, yeah, sure, I'm happy to be by myself. But the vast majority of people don't actually want to die alone. And when your kids are old enough that you don't have them around you all the time, then you will really feel lonely. So I would question if that's really legitimate. And this idea of, I fantasize about living alone with my little girl every day. So that sounds to me like she's just not considering the 3-year-old daughter and her needs at all. In terms of breaking up the family here, obviously that's going to have a huge impact on the daughter. It again depends on how custody works out, how co-parenting works out, but chances are pretty good that that's going to have a pretty significant impact on her. And for her, it's always going to be best to try and live with both biological parents in the house as much as possible. So if you can make that happen, then you should make that happen. I think that people really underestimate how many women regret leaving a relationship that was kind of working, that they could have tried to improve. And then they just didn't invest as much energy as they felt they could have done before deciding to call it quits. And then a couple of years later, they're like, well, damn it, that was a dumb choice. So I would never put myself in the situation where I think future me will regret the decision that I made. And so again, I'm not saying that she should stay in the relationship. If she chooses to leave, then she should choose to leave. And she should make that decision with full belief and conviction that she's making the best possible decision, not only for herself, but also for her child, which to me is fundamental. Now you can see a lot of the comments of people saying, hey, just quit, you're out. This person says, this is a case of falling in love with a fantasy. A lot of people who are in crappy relationships say that they would be better off alone and will come up with reasons as to why they want to be alone, but all of us crave affection in some way. Even the guys who are serial hookup artists do this because what they're really after is affection. I think that you should break up with him because you're not happy and you obviously have no confidence that his changes are permanent, but don't sell yourself an unrealistic justification like, I want to be alone. You want to be rid of your bad relationship so you can improve your quality of life. Now, I agree fundamentally with this. One person replies to this and says, not everyone wants to be in a relationship. And yeah, sure, I can buy that. I can buy that not everyone wants to be in a relationship. I do not think that someone who was happy being in a relationship is suddenly just not happy being in a relationship forever. That person's going to be totally happy with their life from here until until they die. Somehow I think that this is a very short-term way of thinking. So fundamentally for me, it's this idea of regret and this idea of like deluding yourself or giving yourself a different narrative in your head from what the actual problems are. I think if you have a good idea of the problems and then you make a decision based on that, based on reality, then you're much more likely to be confident with the decision that you make, rather than deciding to break up and then 5-10 years down the line being like, well, that was a really terrible life choice and I've been miserable ever since. I think that the risk of that is really sad, not only for yourself, but again, for your daughter, whose needs really should be a lot more important. That's all we have time for today. Feel free to like the video down below or leave a comment if you agreed or disagreed with anything that I said. And you can also subscribe for further episodes. I will see you in the next one.